You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I am Sherry Lipp, Marketing Manager at Stimulus Technologies, and I'm here today with our CEO, Nathan Whittacre, and today we're going to be talking about working from home and best practices when it comes to cybersecurity. Welcome, Nathan.
Morning, Sherry.
To get started, this has been a big topic, obviously, over the last couple of years since the pandemic, and it's a topic that's here to stay. So what are some of the things business owners might not have thought of even at this point in time with work at home?
Well, just kind of before we get into that, honestly, work from home or remote work is quite a nightmare from an IT perspective. It does change the way that IT providers or your IT people have to deal with the end user. And, we all think about it, kind of getting into your question, work from home or remote work or just work from anywhere, is a great thing. I think it gives a lot of opportunities for companies to expand outside of, their region, bring talent in that they might not necessarily have access to. If you work in a small town or maybe you don't have that talent base where you're at, you can expand out and hire employees that might work across the country or maybe even across the world. And so it does open up a lot of opportunities for companies to grow that they wouldn't have had before. And obviously there's some positions that will never be remote work. If you are construction or in retail or whatever it may be that you have that you have to be on site to do your job, those employees may or may not be able to, have that flexibility. But for a lot of your support staff and for professional services companies, having that flexibility, I think helps them out a lot. But, things to not, think about is now you're from an IT perspective, you're taking devices and putting them in foreign or unfamiliar territory and aggressive territory. I mean, you could take a laptop and, be at Starbucks or in a hotel or at somebody's house, and that device is getting attacked potentially all the time. And so the protection goes, you're eliminating one layer of protection from your devices, and it is a problem. So, but I think it's a good thing, and it's a problem that from an IT perspective, we have abilities to solve. It just takes a different look at IT.
So is there a difference in IT or security if an employee is just working at home as opposed to if they're traveling, or a business owner might have to travel a lot? What are there differences in the security in that?
Potentially. So from a home perspective, you can require your employee to put some things in place that give some additional protection. So you could segregate the device onto a separate network or separate Wi-Fi, or require them to have secure routers or things like that in place. But for a lot of businesses, that that might not be an option. Maybe their employees don't have that ability, or it's a shared network or whatever it may be. So in the end, it's from an IT perspective, it's not much different work from home versus working in a coffee shop or working from a hotel. Other than maybe there's an ability to secure the network just slightly better, but I wouldn't, from my perspective, it's all the same.
Okay, so what should an employee use their own device, or you recommend always the company providing that device?
So I was just having a conversation with a prospect about this the other day, about bring your own device versus all, corporate managed devices. And I think you can do both, and it's a possibility to do both. But you have to look at, especially those employee-owned devices, as they're unsecure also. And some considerations you should have as a business owner is think about what data they may or may not be accessing on that device. And if that employee leaves, you may not have the ability to ensure that that data is removed. So let's say, for example, you have maybe a worst case scenario, your HR manager or a payroll person or finance person, and they may be using some cloud-based software to do that HR, but there's potential that they download some PDF reports or Word documents that contain maybe employee social security numbers or bank account information or things like that, that could be stored on that laptop. And the issue now is if that employee leaves or that device gets stolen or one of their kids gets on there and starts playing some video games or downloads some software, now that data could be exposed out to the internet or could be lost forever. And you don't have any control over it potentially. And so in those instances, I recommend, two things. One, give them their own device and then, purely secure that device, or make them log into something like Azure Virtual Desktop or Remote Desktop Server or something along those lines, that they could never have company proprietary information on those personal devices. I think that is a way to do it. It's certainly still not ideal, but it is a way to give employees the ability to work from any device. And then you don't have the ability to transfer data out of that secure environment that your company maintains. So, if you're thinking about that or thinking about the bring your own device, is just think about the data that might be on there and all possibilities of that data being lost. And I often say, how is this going to play out on the 5 o'clock news? You don't want suddenly, local construction company lost all their employees' social security numbers on a data breach, and now they're having to, provide, background checks and credit card or credit checks and things like that for their employees for 10 years because, they lost that data on a personal laptop. So think about how it would play out on the 5 o'clock news when making any of these decisions.
In addition to what devices an employee use, what other kind of considerations should an employer be thinking about before allowing maybe their entire office or maybe an individual employee to work from home?
I think one of the biggest things companies need to think about is communication. It was so easy per se in an office to have inter-office relationships and inter-office communications. And whether you are a regional or multinational company, or you're just allowing your employees to work remotely at home, one of the things you have to deal with is how to communicate effectively inside your company, because, work from home or remote work, you don't end up with that hallway or water cooler talk that, or just popping into somebody's office to talk to them that you would traditionally. And so I think companies have to be, have to think about those aspects of working together that is eliminated because of the remote work, and try to be intentional about creating those opportunities as much as possible. The great thing is there's technologies out there to do that. Whether you're using Teams or Slack or some of these video conferencing tools, there's ways to have that integration that is not the same, but it could be similar and allow for the employees to interact better. So I think communication is a big aspect you have to consider, and you have to be intentional about it. It's not going to happen naturally. How many times have you sat on the beginning of a Zoom meeting and everybody's just like staring at their phones or doing some work or whatever it may be, and then suddenly the meeting starts, and in a conference room, you'd sit and chat with each other and get, how's your dad doing? Is he, or hey, congratulations on your kid graduating from high school or whatever it may be. You have that small talk where it's in Zoom meetings or these video conferences, you don't necessarily have that. So just being intentional, creating that culture and creating those opportunities.
What are there ways for employers to ensure that their employees are working when they're at home? You can't see them anymore.
Man, I can't tell you how many requests I've had over the last 3 years for basically spying on your employees. There are some legal questions about that, and every state's a little bit different. So you might want to, if you want to monitor your employees, whether they're in office or working remotely, there's some legal questions that I suggest talking to counsel about. So I do get that request. I personally, this is a personal philosophy of mine. I don't think that's productive for anybody. Because now you're micromanaging the employee, and now you're also dedicating resources and time to monitoring and micromanaging that team member. So my philosophy is set some goals and some key performance indicators and focus on the results of the employee, of what they're doing, and then monitor those rather than monitoring everything they do. Because, in the office, they're probably playing solitaire too at times on their computer. There's things that happen whether they're in the office or out of the office that's not productive. But as long as, whether they're in the office or out of the office, understand that there's going to be distractions. There's going to be times that it's not productive work. But I don't think you can force the productivity by monitoring everything the employees are doing. So just, looking at those end goals, setting those KPIs in place, and ensuring those are getting done. And then, knowing that's what the employee is doing and they're going to accomplish it. And it gives them some more flexibility too. I think the remote work is some flexibility of, maybe they'll jump on at 7 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night to finish up some work. And you wouldn't go back to the office to do that, maybe not, but there's definitely some flexibilities, and great employees will rise to the occasion and find those times to get the work done and make it flexible for them. So
from an employee standpoint, what are some things that they should be thinking about if they're working at home as far as security?
I think that's probably the big thing is it's the same issues, making sure that all their devices in the household have some type of security protections. Your kids' computers, they're always bringing new devices in, their friends or whatever it may be. And just thinking about, that is a secure environment too. There's a lot of routers out there now that have separate, Wi-Fi networks for guests versus, for personal devices. So think about that. If I have kids and friends come over, ask for the Wi-Fi password, and we have, separate guest Wi-Fi that they can get on. And it just gives the ability for protections of your own devices too. And it's amazing in the households how connected they are. Refrigerators and toasters and TVs and everything are on the network, and are those all secure too? And so there's a lot of data I think people are trying to protect internally, and you don't want to have an external device, causing issues on your internal network, even at home.
Yeah. So what steps should, as somebody's preparing to work from home, what steps should be taken by the company to ensure security, ahead of time?
So all devices, in IT standpoint, we are now securing endpoints and making sure that there's advanced protections in place on all the devices. So we recommend for any mobile device to have next generation antivirus on it, which is doing a lot more work on the system than just a standard antivirus software. So next generation antivirus, having what's called DNS filtering. So that's ensuring that all the websites you're visiting are adhering to the corporate policies, and also protects you from going out to rogue websites, or those those spam or targeted websites, attackers' websites. And I kind of today, I also recommend moving towards zero trust platform, that you have software on the computer that's ensuring that only the applications that should be on that computer are running, and they're behaving like they should. And so we'll probably get in depth in this in another conversation about zero trust. It's a complex topic, but that's it. You have to build a bubble, um, putting putting your computer around in a bubble in IT space with all these protections in place.
And so one last question here, from your personal experience, moving an office that was in office to one that was remote, what are your biggest things you think you learned from that?
This isn't an IT thing, but it's intentional culture, and ensuring that from a company standpoint that we're doing things to still integrate. For us, at the same time we were dealing with COVID and working from home in our headquarters in Las Vegas, we were expanding geographically. So we had opened up about a year and a half before COVID hit, an office in Southern California. We acquired a company in the Midwest, in Missouri, and we were dealing with integration from a regional perspective also, and that's been difficult, for a small business to do. I think, you go work for a small business, you're used to dealing with the same people. You go into the office, you see the people. It's much harder once you expand outside of that small integrated company. And so you just have to be intentional about what you want as a culture. Do you want all your team members, wherever they at, to be completely integrated, or do you want to allow people to work in silos of small teams or regional? Whatever you want to do, just be intentional about it. But just that's what I've learned, is it's much harder whether you're in the same city all working remotely, or across the world working independently. You just have to decide what you want as a company and make those decisions. And there's definitely technology out there to allow you to do it. And that's the great thing we have today. I mean, internet connections have gotten so much better. Everybody has a webcam now. Microsoft and Google and Zoom and these companies have come out with technologies to allow us to collaborate and work together very efficiently. So it's great. I mean, you can do whatever you want as a company. Just make sure you do what you want to do.
To get started, so much valuable information there for businesses. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you, Nathan. Be sure to subscribe and tune into our next show.